It is so good to be with you this morning. It is a great pleasure and an honor to have been invited. So a big thank you to Neil and to Grace for inviting us to come. It's quite nostalgic coming back to Melbourne for us. We haven't actually been here at all for 2 years. But since 2020, COVID, we haven't been here much. And overall, we've been away for 12 years. This coming February is 12 years of us being in New Zealand. And I actually remember the moment when my dad actually came to us probably about 3 or 4 years after we were in New Zealand, and he said, hey, I think we've just got to make the call that you're not missionaries anymore. Like, we just got to make the call. Like, you're off the missionary list. We were on people's fridges. He's like, you're off the fridges. You're done with the missionary status. So now we're just home is New Zealand now, which is awesome. But it's always great to come back and amazing to see so many familiar faces and so many unfamiliar faces, like people who I really don't recognize because of what the Lord's doing in this place, and people who are finding God and coming and being a part of what the Lord's doing here, which is incredible. So thank you again to Neil and Grace. We honor you guys, and we're going to have a really exciting day today. This morning I want to share with you guys, I want to share a word that the Lord gave me, and it's the title of this message is 3 Ways to Block Your Miracle. 3 ways to block your miracle. How many know that our whole belief as Christians, it's a faith belief, right? We need faith. We have to be people who believe for miracles. There's no way to be a true follower of Jesus without being like a faith-filled person. So much of what we do exists completely through faith. And faith is actually what unlocks miracles in our lives. But sometimes we're so busy pursuing faith, we fail to recognize that there are things that we're doing that are blocking miracles in our life. There are things we might be engaging with, maybe attitudes in our heart that actually can stop the flow of miracles in our lives. And we can sit and pray and pray and pray for the same thing, but there's a reason that miracle is actually blocked. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today. And I want to read a story from 2 Kings chapter 5 if you have your Bibles with you. 2 Kings chapter 5. This is a story about a guy named Naaman. You might have read this story before. One of my favorite stories in the Bible. And I'm going to read it from verse 1. It says, Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. By all means, go, the king of Aram replied. I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fella send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me. When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message. Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. But Naaman went away angry and said, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Parphar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned and he went off in a rage. Naaman's servants went to him and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of a young boy. So this is a pretty incredible story. And so we're reading about this guy Naaman, right? And so he's this character that we see in the Bible, but Naaman is not an Israelite. He's not one of God's people. It says he is actually part of the group of people called the Arameans. He's not an Israelite. So he was a leper, and we know if you've read your Bible, we know that lepers are they're cast out of the camp and they're shunned because they've got leprosy and they're diseased and they have to follow all these protocols. It wasn't like that for the Arameans. He didn't have to live that way. He was a commander of the army. He was a really respected guy. He was a valiant warrior, but he also had leprosy. So when we think about Naaman as a leper, we can't think of him as this weak, broken guy who's been like extradited. He's actually a mighty man in his people. And so Naaman has basically this experience where there's this servant girl in his house. She says, go and get prayer from the prophet. He goes to the prophet. It goes a little bit not what he expects, but at the end of the day, he gets his healing. And so there are some things we can learn from this story, and we can learn from Naaman that we need to pay attention to make sure that we actually get our miracle, because Naaman actually came very close to not getting his. So I want to look at what those things are. Number one, be around faithless people. So Naaman was not an Israelite. Naaman wasn't part of a people group who believed in healing or prophets or God, or even like they kind of were different people with different things. But Naaman was actually so fortunate that they had captured this Israelite girl, and she became like a servant to Naaman's wife. So this Israelite girl actually had such a fondness for him, even though she was taken and she was a slave. She had such a fondness for him that she said, oh, I wish that my master would actually just go and see the prophet and he would get his healing. And so for many of us, we actually ended up maybe in a room like this because somebody in our life said, hey, have you tried Jesus? Somebody in our life said, hey, you know, I know you're sick, or I know you're experiencing this thing. I know things are hard, but I believe God can set you free from that. I believe God can heal your body. I believe that God can do a work in your life. The people that you are around are crucially important as to whether or not you live a life where miracles are unlocked. Because we can be in this room on Sunday and be around these people on a Sunday, but if 99% of the time we have a faithless life with faithless people, and the people that we sit with, the people that we go to share with and get advice from, if they're not people who preach Jesus, we're going to miss opportunities where they say, hey, have you prayed about that? Hey, have you gone back and prayed again about that? And you know, sometimes in Christian life it's hard. We pray for healing and we don't get healing. But true followers of Jesus are the people who say, pray again. Let's go again. Like, let's just believe again. And so we are actually we're called to be a body who does this for one another. It's not the responsibility of the church to tell you, hey, God can do that for you. It's actually our responsibility as believers to carry that for each other. But the fastest way to dry up the miraculous is to be around faithless people. Be around people who just don't believe that way. And sometimes it's not even unbelievers. It's actually Christians who just say, that's like the extra thing. Maybe God will do it. Maybe he won't. The kind of Christians who just don't really believe in the power of God. And we know in this day and age, the power of God is severely under attack. Cessationism is on the rise. The whole belief system that God did what he did in the Bible and it was only for that time, that belief system is coming back with a vengeance in the modern day church. But I want to remind you today that he was a powerful God. He still is a powerful God. He did miracles then. He still does miracles now. And our fight is to make sure that our circumstances never become the dictator of what our God can and cannot do. But we need to be reminded of that. We need the right people around us to push us back to that place. And, you know, the people who are around you, ultimately, they do influence you. You know, I'm noticing it even on this trip. We've come back to Australia from New Zealand, and we're different. Like, I'm different. I don't talk exactly how I used to talk. I used to talk more like this. And now I talk more like this. No, not this. But, you know, I'm kind of in this middle ground where I don't know if I'm an Aussie or a Kiwi. I've changed half my words and not the others. And my kids are so Kiwi that half the time I don't understand them and they don't understand me. Because we're sort of just this multicultural household now, and they just mock me because I don't say things the right way. But, you know, you change. Ultimately, you change. We're different now. We're around Kiwis. We value different things. You know, I went to a performance last night of Beauty and the Beast, which was amazing. And I noticed everybody there was probably 80% of the people there were wearing black. In the springtime, in the warm weather. And I've realized this is actually such a Melbourne thing. Because in New Zealand, nobody wears black. People the other day someone made a joke that I look like a witch because I was wearing black head to toe. And I was like, no, this isn't witchcraft, it's fashion, you know? But that's how it is in New Zealand. It's completely different. But we've been there so long, over time, those influences have changed us. We become like the people we are around. And if we are around people who do not believe in the power of God, who do not believe for that miracle, we're not going to see as many miracles as we should. This is why I think what's exciting is being in a church that actually pursues the miraculous. It's one thing to say we believe in it. It's another thing to lay hands on and call it out and prophesy and actually declare this is going to happen. There's an element of risk-taking that we need. And so that brings me to my second point. The way you block your miracle is you don't take risks. We see that Naaman actually, this girl makes this comment to him. Well, I wish my master would go and see the prophet. Naaman then goes to, the leader. He goes to the king and says, hey, what do you think about me going and seeing the prophet? Pretty risky. They don't believe in God. They're not Israelites. But he goes to the king and he says that. And then the king takes an even greater risk. And he says, yes, go, Naaman, because I love you and I want you to get rid of this leprosy. I want you to be healed. And when you go, I'm going to write a letter that's going to go with you so that they know why you're coming, and bring all these gold and silver shekels and outfits and clothes. Bring all of this stuff with you because we are trying to make it so likely that you're going to get this miracle. That was how on board the king was. And so the king writes a letter and sends it to the king of Israel. So from one king to another king. And the king of Israel knows nothing of it, gets a letter saying, hey, I'm sending this guy so he can get healing. And the king of Israel's like, why have you sent this to me? Are you trying to start a fight? Are you trying to start a war? I'm not a god. I can't heal this man. And so he tears his robes and he's really upset. But this element of risk-taking was crucial to getting this miracle. And that has not changed. And Adam spoke a great word about this to the leaders on Friday when we had our leaders retreat. There is a moment in time, usually when a miracle is about to happen, where we have to step into partnership with that miracle. There's a risk that needs to be taken. Jesus called people to taking risks. Jesus said, pick up your mat. Jesus said, come, step out, Nazareth, come forth. Come forth. There was this risk not only for Jesus to call that out, but also for Lazarus to get up. There's risk on all sides. This version of following Jesus where I never lose face is impossible. I mean, you can do that if you're just not going after the miraculous. But if you care more about saving face and making sure you never get embarrassed, never get humiliated, it's going to probably be a little bit of a dry version of following him. There's no person who gets it perfect all the time. No matter how prophetic you are, no matter how gifted you are, no one gets it perfect all the time. Only Jesus did that. But if we want to pursue this lifestyle of seeing signs and wonders, we have to take risks. There was a moment in our church, this is a while ago, and I don't have this in my notes, but I feel to share it. I was preaching, and it was like the first word of knowledge the Lord had ever given me. And I was so nervous. What had happened was about 6 months before, as I was falling asleep at night, when you wake up real suddenly, like you fall off a cliff or something, or a dog runs at you and then bam, you're awake, I had one of those, but when that happened to me, that someone threw like a ball. I saw a ball coming toward me and it smashed into a window, but the window didn't break and I jolted awake. 6 months later, a Saturday night, I go to sleep and the same thing happens, except this time the ball hits a baby. And I jolt awake. And I think, this is so weird. This reminds me of what happened 6 months ago. But 6 months ago, I heard a word. I heard the word Papakura, which is a name of a town in New Zealand. I heard that word 6 months before. So that Saturday night, it happens a second time with the baby. I go to church and I'm preaching. And in worship, I feel this anxiety that I have to say something about this word. I have to call out, there's somebody here from Papakura. I have to say something. And this is the first time I've ever done this in church. And man, I'm nervous. I'm so nervous and I think, I don't want to do this. And also, I don't want to be embarrassed. That's my big thing, really. That's the only risk I'm taking is I'm going to say it and there's not going to be anyone and I'm going to look a bit stupid. But I'm nervous at it, but I know it's the Lord. And so I get up and I'm like, is anybody here from Papakura? Silence. And I'm like, I'm just going to give you a minute. It's just, I'm just standing there. It's kind of awkward. Everybody's looking at me. And then just maybe a minute later of awkwardness, out the back of the crowd, this woman starts to put her hand up. And I'm like, are you from there? And she's like, my family is. And I was like, oh, okay, come here. And so she comes out, she comes to the front of the church and I see her and I as I'm speaking to her and explaining to her the vision, I think about the baby. And in my mind, I think, you've lost a baby. And so I don't say that into the microphone. I take the microphone away and I say to her, have you lost a baby? And she says to me, you know me. And I'm like, I don't know you. And she's like, no, you do. You know me. I met you. I think it was maybe 3 years ago. I saw you at a cemetery because we were at a cemetery burying our friend's baby, and this woman who'd also lost a baby was there. Now, I didn't meet her that day. I didn't see her, but I'd heard of this woman who was at the cemetery the same day that we were. And so she's never, ever been to our church before, the very first time she comes to Freedom Center, and I call her out. So I give her this word, and I say, I believe the Lord's going to redeem this story and, the loss that you've had, and I pray for her. And so her and her husband were like, we're coming to church today. We don't know if we should be here. We don't know if this is our place. They come from another church. But they came, and then I have this prophetic word for her about her baby, and they are literally now some of the most key people in our church. The Lord is redeeming this story of grief and loss in their life out of a random thing that happened 6 months beforehand in the night. Like, the Lord can do crazy things like that, but it takes risk. And how many other times have I tried to, go after words of knowledge and things and they haven't worked out? Way more than that, but I'm telling you the good story. Because, of course I am, But it's something we have to be okay with. If we want to pursue the miraculous, we've actually got to be okay with taking risk. Naaman could have gone all the way to the prophet, and the prophet said, I can't heal you. But he had a letter, he had his bags packed with everything that he needed, and he took the risk to go out there and to see maybe this time something's going to happen. Sometimes I think we rest on the fact that, I prayed about it and nothing shifted. Can I tell you something? Go to the next prayer meeting. Go to the next healing meeting. Go to the next encounter night. We have to stop acting like God owes us an immediate solution and it's not on us to pursue a miracle, because it is. And we say this all the time in our church to people, like, if you prayed and we believed for something and it didn't happen, all we can promise you is that we will keep believing and we will keep praying. And I can't explain why it hasn't happened yet, and I can't explain why the breakthrough isn't here. But what I can promise you is I will keep partnering with you and keep praying with you and believing that this will shift in Jesus' name. We have to be those people. And I really believe that God is going to do some miracles in this place today. That there are things you've been believing for that haven't shifted yet. Today's the day. Today is the day that sickness is going to shift. And I really see the Lord restoring relationships today. And people who've come in here with very heavy burdens, things in life that are very, very hard. And one thing I can promise you is even when the hard things don't shift, God can strengthen you. Sometimes the thing in life, the thing that's hard, it's going to stay hard. There's nothing you can really do about that. But what God can give you is grace and strength for the season that you're in. And that sometimes is as big of a miracle as the thing changing, is the grace he can give you to walk through that pain, to walk through that hardship. So I believe he's going to do that today. The next one, number 3, is be a skeptic. And Naaman, this is the most interesting part of the story, and I'm going to reread it for you from verse 11. So Naaman goes to Elisha's house, and Elisha doesn't go outside. Elisha doesn't go to meet him. Elisha said to the king, send him to me. So he knows he's coming, and he knows he needs to deal with him and pray for him and heal his leprosy. But Elisha doesn't go outside the house. He sends a messenger. So he sends a messenger out, and the messenger says, go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. And then Naaman has this really poor reaction. And so it says in verse 11, Naaman went away angry, and he said, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of his Lord, his God, and wave his hand over the spot, and that would cure my leprosy. Naaman is offended with the method Elisha gave him for how to get his healing. Naaman wanted the man of God to come out and lay hands on him. Come and show me that respect. Come and at least do this thing in a way that I feel it should be done. And at least lay your hands on me. And at least, do the thing that prophets normally do. And then he even goes on to say, why would I go and wash in the river Jordan when we have better rivers in Damascus where I'm from? The pride of the man. So if you're going to tell me to wash in a river, I'd actually rather wash in my river. We have better rivers. We have cleaner, better rivers. Why would I go to your filthy Jordan River for this miracle? He's actually so full of pride, and he is angry with the options he gets to heal his leprosy. And sometimes this is us, where we say we're going after a miracle. We say we believe God. We say we believe in the pastor, but he didn't pray for me the way I wish he would. He didn't spend enough time with me. I didn't get that meeting I should have gotten. I've got a hard situation. I've got a hard time. And where was my XYZ? It's the trap of the enemy to block your miracle. It's the trap of the enemy to keep you from seeing that breakthrough. Because maybe it's not just about a moment at the altar. Maybe God's saying, go and do this. And we're saying, no, actually, I just want the man of God to wave his hand over me. You know, we see this all the time where we're in meetings and there's somebody, you know, we bring speakers to our church and there's somebody with anointing, someone like exciting is coming and everybody wants to line up for the man of God, right? We do. We love it. Our flesh we want that. I want, you know, the person who has all that grace and that gifting and I want them to pray for me. I'm the same. I go to every prophetic meeting and I'm like, pick me. Give me my 407,050th prophetic word. I don't know what God's saying to me, even though he said it 600 times, you know, like it just could be different. I don't know. Like it's our human nature to want things a certain way. It's our human nature to want it to be, lay your hands on me, pay me attention, do it the way I thought it should be done. But this can block our miracle. And skepticism is trying to grab a hold of the church. Skepticism is, I don't know if that's really God. I don't know. I didn't feel that. I saw that person worshiping. That didn't feel like it was God to me. Can I tell you something? Like, we're in an incredible season where God is moving in New Zealand. It's amazing. It's really incredible. But in all of that incredible and in all the things God's doing, there is so much weird, rogue, crazy stuff. Like, we have crazy stuff happen all the time. Right now, we have someone who comes every week and they shake profusely from the second they get into the auditorium until the second they leave. I'm talking like the entire time. I mean, I know they're burning a lot of calories. For that, I'm like, not a bad idea. I feel like I should just get my steps in, you know, like we're all here to be active. Like, why not? It can't hurt. But I'm saying, like, there are things that happen that are like not in the normal flow of like how this is expecting to be. There are people doing things I wish they wouldn't do. There are people saying things I wish they wouldn't say. Like, there's all kinds of stuff happening. But if we allow skepticism to come into the church, where we think we might be doing the right thing, we could be blocking something God is doing. We have to be careful we never adopt this attitude. Why would I go to your river when I have this river? If God tells you to go somewhere and that's where your miracle is, you go. If God tells you go and do this thing to unlock a miracle, you go and you do it. It's not just it has to be like this on a Sunday in church by this person. It doesn't always work like that, and it certainly didn't work like that for Naaman. How dare he not come out of his house? How dare he not lay hands on me? And this is a real thing when it comes to altar calls. I was waiting there and no one prayed for me. Whoops, like, didn't see you. Thought someone else prayed for you. We cannot let those little things, it's the little foxes. It's the little foxes that turn us from being faith-filled, powerful believers into skeptics. And you know what I've really felt in my spirit in the last probably 6 months is that the skepticism is actually very spiritual and it has drive behind it. Like, there is a demonic attack on believers to come away from the power of God. And the way most of us are encountering this spirit is through our phone. The content that is being demonically put out by people who claim to be believers, who operate under an antichrist spirit, that is intentionally reaching you in your phone to make you question, is God really real? Is the charismatic church really safe? Is it really God, or is it the sound of the drums? Can I tell you, there is a demonic force in our society that is trying to corrupt the church. It is trying to corrupt the church. And I've literally been at the point where I'm watching a video and I feel a spirit through it. Like an antichrist spirit. This is actually demonic to sow a seed of doubt into my mind about God. And we know these things, right? It's like ex-Christians, and now I'm coming to tell you all the stuff that was wrong about the church. All of this stuff. And people have experiences, and these people are actually like really broken, really hurt people doing what they feel to do, not even probably aware that they are working with an evil spirit that is very demonic, that is trying to destroy the church. My friends, we have to guard our eye gate. We have to guard what we listen to. Because if you sit and go on a deep dive of like reformation, deconstruction, you know, we're just going to pull it all apart and we're going to question everything. Why do we think people who go and do that don't come back? Because it's spiritual. Because it's the opposite of what we're called to be, which is faith-filled believers. Faith is believing in what you can't see. Skepticism is questioning what you can't see. It's just, I don't know if that's God. I don't think it should look like that. It's a spirit that is running rampant in the church. And we see in the life of Naaman, had he stayed here, he would not have gotten his healing. And again, the right people were around him because they turned to him And they said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, you probably would have done it. If the prophet had told you to fast for 30 days, you probably would have done it. If the prophet had told you to go and climb a mountain and at the top, when you reach the peak of the mountain, God's going to release your miracle, you probably would have done it." All he's saying is dip in the river 7 times. You should probably just give it a go. It can't hurt, right? And so he goes and does it again because he had the right people around him, and he gets healed of his leprosy. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the dialogue that we are pouring into the faith element of our life? What am I saying that is in alignment or out of alignment with being somebody who sees the miraculous? Because questioning God all the time blocks the miraculous. Pointing out what he doesn't do and where he isn't and where that was wrong, it blocks the miraculous. We actually, with this person shaking, I'll carry on the story, this shaky person in the church, we were in the front row a few weeks ago, and they were migrating week by week from the back toward the front. And so this week they were at the front. So the front left just shaking. And so we're there, we're worshiping, and I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, Lord, what's going on here? Shaking. Okay, I'm still worshiping, I'm looking back, and I'm not getting anything. I'm not getting any dangerous, I'm not getting any strong witchcraft, I'm not getting any of that. And then people start to come over to us. Do you feel it's witchcraft? Should we do something about this? And just like, coming over and whispering, do you sense witchcraft? That's what I'm picking up. And I'm like, no, I don't. So I left it, and I said to Adam, do you sense witchcraft? People are questioning me. And he's like, no, I don't. I think we should just leave it. I'm like, yeah, let's leave it. We leave it. And what I feel strongly is someone needs to sit. I see her sitting in the foyer talking. That's what I see. I feel like someone needs to sit with her and talk to her. And then we find out on the Monday, someone sat with her and spoke to her. She's an amazing woman, loves the Lord, and every time she's in the presence of God, she just shakes uncontrollably. But there's people sitting in the church saying, I think that's witchcraft. And they're not evil people, but are we maybe like overly fearful? Are we maybe giving the enemy too much of a foothold? Are we maybe leaning too far into the demonic and leaning too far into the questioning and the wondering and not just leaning in with faith? And because you know why this is important? We've had real witches in our church, many. Some that have done crazy stuff. If you want to know, I'll tell you the stories. It's like wild. So we've had some serious real witchcraft. And usually I think the people who fear witchcraft, they don't really get it, right? Because when you've dealt with real witchcraft, you quickly realize how much higher the name of Jesus is. Like there's actually no need to fear, genuinely, like there's no need to fear witchcraft. So I'm standing there thinking, even if she's doing witchcraft right now, it doesn't matter. She has no power in this room. And by the fact that we believe that, she then has no power in this room. We only give it power when we believe it has power. And so many people do not understand that. Your skepticism and your questioning God creates space for unbelief in your life. It doesn't make God less powerful. It makes you positioned to not see the miraculous. And so we're failing to recognize where we are in control of our own posture, of our own heart, which then will either open or slow the flow of the miraculous in our world. It's a faith journey. We are on a faith journey. And so there's another person in Scripture who was on this faith journey, and I want to read this passage from Mark chapter 5. We all probably know it. We know it and we love it. Mark chapter 5, verse 25 to 34. It says, a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. And she had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and she touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around in the crowd and he asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. And the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, your suffering is over. This woman, in contrast to Naaman, who said, why didn't the man of God come and lay hands on me the way I wanted? This woman said, if I can just touch. the hem of his garment, I know I will be healed. The distinction is her faith. The distinction is her posture. And sometimes we're more like Naaman, saying, well, if God's going to do it, he's going to do it. Like as though he owes us something. Instead of being people who are just peeling through the crowd, desperate to go and lay hands on, I just need to touch Jesus. And this is the posture of who we are in the room. It's how we worship. Am I in here waiting for the music to touch me, or am I going to go and touch Jesus? Am I waiting for the sermon to touch me, or am I going to go and touch Jesus? This is the only way to come out of the deep-rooted stuff that's in our lives. I'm not waiting on God to help me. I am going to pursue him day and night until this thing shifts. I'm going to pray and keep on praying until this breakthrough comes. I'm going to keep declaring healing over my body until my body is healed. That's faith. That's the woman who had the issue of blood. That's what the hem of his garment can do. And I just want to invite the worship team to come back up as we close. And this morning, I believe God's going to do miracles in this room. And I also understand that some of us are waiting on miracles. I'm waiting on miracles too. But waiting on miracles doesn't mean God doesn't do miracles anymore. We need to make sure we posture ourselves to a place of faith that then allows God to move. I'm not waiting on any one person. I'm not waiting on any great leader. Nobody is responsible for me. Nobody's responsible for my healing. Nobody's responsible for my walk with the Lord. That's my responsibility. And something that I feel we've really pushed in our home church, where God is doing so much, is everybody take up your own mantle. Take up your own mat. You are responsible for you. It's not the church's job, because you are the church. It's not the job of the leadership to believe for your miracle. Only you can do that. Because if we're praying and believing for you, and you're at home sitting under sickness, you're at home sitting under condemnation, you're at home sitting under the lies of the enemy, we can pray for you every Sunday. It's not going to shift. We can lay hands on you every week. It's not going to change until you move yourself into a place where you say, I think God is going to come through for me. I actually believe he is going to come through for me. That's who he is. So why don't you stand to your feet?